So this is essentially what I'm for now calling the yin and yang theory and entropy. And essentially it's, I've been noticing a pattern all over everything in existence, but it's always an intake, all right? And then there's a cone. Cone stands for concentration of nano energy, cone. And then there is fusion or entropy. And then there is output, okay? Intake is negative, output is positive. This can be seen everywhere. It's in every single part of life. So here's an example. Now, let's say you take two cultures, whether they be bacterial cultures in petri dishes or human cultures on the earth. It works exactly the same. You mix them together and they create entropy between the two of them, right? They both come in as their original concentrated selves, and then they mix together, and the result is war, chaos, life, energy. It's all of the vibration and fumes of the mix happening, and then they eventually neutralize one another. They are both essentially dead versions of their old selves, right? That is gone now. It has mixed and neutralized. That's the essential structure of entropy. That's how that works, you know. It's not just thermodynamics, it's everything. But during the mix, the process of entropy or fusion is what creates all of the energy that we call life. You know, it's all the vibrations or whatever it is. And eventually they become neutral or peaceful, right? They become equaled out. Same thing goes for peroxide and bacteria. When you first pour it into there, there's this stage or a time period where they are mixing and creating crazy, intense chaos and energy, and things are coming off as a byproduct, fumes and gases and all kinds of things. And eventually it turns into a neutralized substance. Same thing with you. Your father's original solid concentrated genes mixed with your mother's concentrated genes. They mix together and become separate versions that are no longer the original living gene. They have destroyed one another, created entropy with each other, right? And energy, and that turns into you. You are a neutralization of your mother and father's genes or information, DNA, right? Same thing goes with something like colors. Very simple. Red and blue mixes together, all right? And for a minute there, it doesn't look like red or blue. And then eventually it concentrates out to purple, right? And then purple is free to move on and create entropy with other colors to become something else again. So every time entropy happens, it creates a neutralized thing that is a mix of the original two, but the original two are no longer existent. But now the new thing is able to move on and become entropedic with something else, right? Now, that's just my little scribble, red and blue. Any of these things, they mix together, they're both themselves at first, and then they mix and they get entangled and become a fog or a mess of what they used to be. And then it comes out to a neutralization of the original two halves, or death of the original two halves, their concentrated form, but it's a new or a birth of a new compound. You know, male and female, mother and father made you. Red and blue made purple, right? It all has to do with intake, mixture or fusion and entropy, and the energy that comes off of it, which is the output. Now, the same thing goes for pretty much everything. Now, these are just some examples. A tree, okay, negative and positive, two halves, yin and yang. Our brain, left and right, two halves, yin and yang. Right in between them where they mix, there is our pineal gland. That's where all of our life and energy and thoughts and visualization and everything else that makes us human comes from. Okay, the same thing is true with a planet, all right? A planet has a magnetic spectrum that goes in and out. The center of the planet is the core or the eye of least resistance, where the two cones converge and become a central eye. That's what gravity and stuff comes from. Atoms are the same way, yin and yang, north and south, negative and positive. They create basically a tiny funnel or a tornado, right? Tornadoes are the same way, intake and output. planets, solar systems, everything does the same thing. They spin, they generate waves outward into the, I guess you would say, ether or medium. Now, what I'm calling that is nano energy. Remember cone, concentration of nano energy? Every time you use a cone, you concentrate something into a tiny, tightly packed version of itself. Now, what I'm calling nano energy is the underlying field, ether or medium, whatever you want to call it, upon which all matter dances or vibrates, right? Which all life exists. Sound and light and everything we perceive comes from vibration of the ether or the medium, the nano energy. If this were our solar system, the nano energy would be the green chalkboard that it exists on. All of the things we know exist on this field or this, whatever you want to call it. I think we're currently calling it space-time. It's essentially what it is. Now, the Big Bang is no exception to this, or a rapid expansion. And it would suggest that our universe is actually one of two, because yin and yang is a principle that is everywhere throughout nature in every possible way, okay? Then it's something that is just dictated. If you start to look for it, you'll see it everywhere. Same thing comes from nuclear fusion, right? You're mixing two things together. You are getting the fusion of the two, the energy, the heat that comes off of them as they neutralize one another, right? Now, this is everywhere. You can see it: light, dark, hot, cold, positive, negative, male, female, left brain, right brain, centrifuge and centipede. There's always equal and opposite, right? Just like every action has an equal and opposite reaction, okay? It's the same thing with black holes. Black holes are an intake. They're the suction side of basically a cone, something that concentrates nano energy and matter to a finite point. And most likely, given the idea that everything is yin and yang, intake, okay, and output. Black hole is the intake, output would be a sun or a white hole, something like that. Now, it's very likely that anytime a black hole sucks in a planet or a star, it's actually creating another one on the other end. It's feeding that through, and it's coming out, and it's going to concentrate in the center of the tornado, essentially, just like the eye of a tornado does. It's the place of least resistance. It's where things seem to gather or be drawn towards. That's exactly the same thing we have in the center of our planet, right? Our planet spins, atoms spin, and two things they do is centrifuge and centipede. There's always the outward waves and the inward waves. They're pulling you in towards the center, and they're pushing you out at the same time. Another example is, this is how entropy works. It always takes two halves that concentrate together and make one thing. That then moves with another thing to create another point. Then that moves. Each two things always create another point. That's how entropy works between gene pools, family trees, anything, everything you want, right? Anything you can imagine. But this is everywhere. This is everywhere. All right, the same thing goes for our eyes. Our eyes literally use cones to concentrate waves of light into our mind. They diverge or converge, and then it puts an output, right? Intake and output, negative and positive. That output goes to my brain. I process that. Same for the ear. The ear literally has a cone inside of it that converges waves down to a finite point, concentrates the nano energy into a little point that rings your receiver. That receiver then puts positive output to your brain. Your brain is the processor, all right? That brain can then create waves with your voice box, right? Which I haven't drawn, but your voice box can generate these waves for other people's receivers to take in and create input to their brain from what you're saying or your stimuli, your song, whatever it is you're doing, you're creating waves. All right, so these cones are everywhere, and they always concentrate something. Okay, so everything is positive and negative. Everything has a yin and yang version. There is no exception to this. It is all over existence. It's kind of crazy that we haven't seen it yet. Or I guess maybe some people have, but they just don't have the pedigree and provenance, I suppose.